So, this class is on how to fight from the bind, and that's sort of the focus point. We're going to use longswords because we can, but this is sort of more of a conceptual idea of why we use the bind, what a bind is, why we use it, and what the advantages of that are. I'm going to walk through just sort of a little bit of a spiel, and then what we'll do is we'll get to sort of put it into practice ourselves, so we get used to feeling the bind and working for the bind. But this concept can be used with a longsword, it can be used with an arming sword, a sword buckler. You actually see binds or variants of binds depending on what they call it, either crossing the sword or constraining the sword or narrowing, gaining, all these things. Everything from the Tower manuscript 133, that is pretty much one of our earliest sources, all the way up to rapier in the 17th century and beyond. You see gaining and binding the sword all the way into classical and modern fencing. So the idea of binding the sword is actually fundamental to sword practice. So then now we have to figure out, what are we talking about when we're talking about binding the sword? And so what we're really talking about is pretty much any time that the swords come together and cross, there's a moment in time in which we've come into contact with each other's swords, right? And this moment is the bind. And it can be a lot of different things. I can be soft in the bind, right? And now I've given Guillaume the center of that fight. I can be hard in the bind, right? And I can be strong there. Or we can be sort of neutral in the bind, and we can be playing with the feel of each other's swords, right? Well, what's the point of all of this? Why do we need a bind? Most people you see, especially newer fighters who come in, unarmored or longsword or whatever they're doing, they see somebody coming to attack them, and so they want to get that sword out of the way, so they strike at it, right? They strike through the sword, they go, oh, now I can hit him in the face, right? Or they come at him and they launch this attack, and then they don't know what to do. They launch another attack, and all these things where they just, right, kind of like this, or what you see, I'm going to do this a little, maybe borrow the synthetic with Guillaume real quick, because just grab a synthetic, because you see this a lot more with synthetics, right? We're fighting, and we're, oh yes, right, where we're just sort of like,
and you can see him flex.
Right, you see him sort of flex and roll off. Now you notice I switched to the synthetics for that, because it doesn't happen with steel. Right? And so one of the things that we're trying to learn, certainly in the unarmored, is what a real sword does. And with a real sword, if I'm throwing those, trying to push through, it doesn't work, it doesn't flex off in the same way, it doesn't bounce the same way that the synthetics do. So we have to be aware of that in what we're learning, especially if our goal is to really learn sort of the art of swordplay and not just how to fight with these synthetics. That's one. So we can't necessarily just flail at each other, right? And if Guillaume comes to attack me and I want to defend myself from it, I essentially have to do something about that. So I come in and I'm going to throw, a cut down on it. This is all well and good, but really I haven't done much except for give Guillaume opportunities to hit me on the other side as my sword goes flying this way. Now I'm in trouble, right? Because what I did was I just whacked his sword out of it, right? And so now we're starting to see kind of where our conundrums are. And I'm going to put one more conundrum. A couple of things. If Guillaume were to come running at me with his sword well above his head, in an uncontrolled fashion, to cleave me in twain, he is going to be a man on a mission. Right? The charging barbarian, right? Who thinks that's a good idea? Right? Now, hands up. Nobody thinks that's a good idea. Why is this not a good idea for Guillaume? What's the inherent danger of Guillaume's thing?
Hook right in the belly.
He gets stabbed well before he can get close enough to cleave me in twain, right? And if I do that in a protective fashion, right? Now I can strike him in the face, which I didn't do because he's not wearing a mask, right? And I can block that overhead cut with my sword, I have all day long to put my sword into him as he is Conaning the Barbarian, right? Not good. We know that's not good. Everybody knows that's not good. We've seen it in the movies. It never works out well for that guy. Guillaume's going to do something a little bit different. He's going to start out of distance in a very, very nice, well-formed Volltog. How many people know what Volltog is? Excellent. Place. So he's got a very nice guard. He's out of distance. He's going to, in that guard, step into distance and then come to strike me in the head. Right? So he steps into distance and then he moves to strike me in the head. Right? Is this good?
Yeah, from his point of view, sure.
From Guillaume's point of view, sure. Is it better than what he was doing before?
Oh, yeah.
Is it inherently dangerous?
Sure.
Right? The problem with this is it looks real nice, and it's what he's trained to do. Not Guillaume specifically, but it's what other people have trained to do. Is I'll be the guy, I want to come in, I step into that distance, and then I throw my strike right for his face. It's a good blow. It's a nice, well-formed strike right for his face. Right? What's the problem?
Well, it's going to wind and nail you.
Right? The problem is the same problem here. I'm stepping in guard and then committing to an attack in the distance of my cut. Right? Guillaume's going to do that. The problem is I can thrust him. And my thrust is going to be faster than his cut. Right? So here he is. He steps into distance. And I can arrive at the same time. The danger is in going from out of distance to in distance for a cut. That is inherently dangerous. And if he steps in guard, I can hit him because I can arrive at the same time. I can do it with a cut too if I commit a little bit more of my time. He steps in, and before he can start his cut, I'm already landing my cut. Right? This is the issue. This is inherently dangerous. So if you're in that fight, you're like, well, I got to get close enough to hit him, and you step forwards to get there, that's when your good opponent is going to act. Right? Now I've got to block, I've got to do something. None of those are good ideas. So what we arrive at is an environment in which, as we close that distance, many people have heard me say this, and I've heard other people say this, as we close that distance, we have to get our sword out in front of us. We have to get our defense out in front of us. We have to get our protection out in front of us. So now, before Guillaume steps into that distance, as he steps into the distance for a cut, he's first going to throw a cut as he goes, right? He's going to put his sword out in the middle, right? So
if I can kind of reiterate, right? I am nowhere near in range.
Right. So just make your cut, right? He can't hit me, but he's done his step with a cut. Now, if I try to attack Guillaume in that time as he's stepping in, he's already ahead of me. Now I can't attack him. Okay? So by making those actions, whatever they happen to be, I'll make another one. So Guillaume and I are out of distance. He's in Volltog. I'm in a low guard like the Change or the Iron Gate, depending on which system you're looking at. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to make my entry cut, right, or entry action here, right? Now, if Guillaume tries to attack me in that time, I'm already in a position to strike him. I've defended against his cut. I'm not vulnerable to that initial attack. He can't hit me without getting hit himself. Okay? And you see what happens when he tries to. He puts himself on my sword in a bad position. This is the evolution of the bind. Guillaume is now going to be smarter. He doesn't want to lose this engagement simply because he attacked me while I was attacking him. He's going to make that same action, but instead of committing forward to strike me, he's going to step forwards and create a bind with the sword, right? So here, I step in, I make my action, same action I just did. Guillaume is going to then bind my sword.
Getting control of this and forcing me to create create an attack is actually creating a defense for him. So now he's got my sword in a place where he can read it, he understands what's going on here, and now he can get me in a place where he can just wind through or whatever. He can attack me, and I can't get to him. Okay, so
yeah, exactly, right, exactly, and that's sort of the key element here. And this will go back to just that last step is that I want to be making small actions when my opponent is making large actions. That's how we win fights. Always. I make a smaller action than he makes, I'm in charge. He makes a big action, we know this, that's a big action. I make a small action. Even so much as he lifts his point before he strikes me. That is a big action. I make a smaller action to strike him, right? So we always want to be making small actions. Eventually you get to this point where your swords, where you're both making very small actions. And you come out here and you're like, okay, what's going to happen now, okay? And this is what we're saying is that it doesn't really matter sort of if your bind is at the points or if your bind's a little bit more forwards. This is a function of distance, and that is important, and that's again kind of another class on how distance works in this environment. If you're bound up here, you're wrestling, but it's still a bind. Okay, so all of those are binds, and so I want to focus on the three, in my mind, the three sort of categories of binds, which are essentially the soft, being you're reading your opponent. Your opponent can either be soft in the bind, they can be hard in the bind, or they can be neutral in the bind, right? If you want to think versus compared to you. So in this case, we're going to come from my perspective. If Guillaume sort of let his hands go limp, or actually we'll go from Guillaume's perspective. Guillaume's come to the bind, we've come to the crossing, and I let my sword out, right? I don't have a lot of leverage here anymore. I've relaxed my arms, and I've lost leverage. I've gained flexibility, but I've lost leverage. This is me being soft in the bind, right? That's how I read this. This is soft in the bind. If I'm going to push at Guillaume's sword and really get out here with my hands and my arms, right? This is being hard in the bind, right? And if we're in this middle zone where we're sort of just neither one of us really has the advantage in the bind, we're neutral in the bind. The advantages to being neutral in the bind is your opponent doesn't know what you're going to do.
Much harder to read.
It's much harder to read a neutral bind because you can go soft or hard at any point in time, right? If I'm hard in the bind, right, you come to that bind, I'm hard out here, right? Now, Guillaume knows I'm in the advantage and I want to take advantage of that. He knows that, so when I come at him, again, if I make a big action to try to attack him, he then makes a response and he can do whatever he wants from there, whatever that response happens to be, right? If I'm soft in the bind, now I've drawn my opponent to being hard in the bind, and maybe I get him to commit to the attack, and then I can step around. Being neutral in the bind is where everything is the most advantageous and the most dangerous. This is where we really want to be able to read our opponent and know what we can do against them. But in order to accomplish that, we essentially, I'll tell you, I'm going to do this for the camera, and then we'll get into the fights. Okay? Is if I'm hard in the bind and I have the advantage, or I'm neutral, Guillaume's going to be soft. So I've come out of the bind. I don't really recommend being hard or soft. I really want to be more fluid. But Guillaume's gone soft. He's soft in the bind, and I read that. My best opportunity from here is to thrust. I want to go straight forwards into him. If he's hard in the bind, my best opportunity is to move my sword, right, and strike him on the other side. If we're neutral in the bind, this is what we'll focus on towards the end of the class, because this is the most opportune thing. The problem here is if I go hard, if I go, oh, thrust, right, he can read that and defend, or he can just move. He reads that, move, just avoid. he makes an avoidance maneuver, and now I've missed because he's read my hardness, right? If I try to go forwards, if I go here and I try to go forward soft, now I get poked in the face. So what do I do from the neutral bind? This is what the Germans call winding, okay? And what we do when we wind is we turn our sword and we create a new leverage position. And there's a couple of different ways to wind. One, I can wind into a thrust, right? And you notice that I didn't push his sword there. It's a different thrust. If I'm here and I go like this, see his sword move? But if I wind, his sword doesn't move. Therefore, he doesn't feel the leverage change. He doesn't feel the leverage change. He doesn't have time to react. I can wind with a thrust. I can even, especially in a closer bind, I can wind with a cut. Both of them are viable options. The wind gives me the option of moving forwards without telling them where I'm going. That's the key element to wind. You can do it the German style, like I just did, or you can use Finestra, which is the Friulian Italian style, which works almost exactly the same way. You can either turn your edges backwards, or you just turn your edges up, and you can go in. And both of them are exactly the same, whether you use Finestra or Ox, various different things. So we're going to go through the mechanics of how to do those things, and how to fight from behind, and then what happens once your opponent starts to react to you. We get to go walk through all of those steps and really explore what our options are for the bind. In the middle ages. All right, everybody get two more.
Good. Perfect. Right.
Awesome.
Oh yeah.
Oh, those look great.
Yeah. Nice.
Those are really
nice.
good. All right, I'm gonna do one last one, both directions. But what I want to make sure that that when you're in that bind, don't get caught down on one foot, right? So I saw this a couple of times from various different people, but when you make that step, when I make that cut out, I'm going to make the bind. Gail makes the initial cut. If I step out here, now all of my weight, what I haven't done is readjusted my body. So this is fundamentally good longsword technique in my opinion, just in general. Is when you make this cut, especially if you're stepping at an angle, let your back foot move with your front foot. So when I come out and bind, I've adjusted both feet. And now I can operate my next step however I want to, with whatever foot I want to do. I don't get caught going bunk, and then I don't know, and then I'm off balance and I don't know what to do. Let that body really adjust. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't adjust too much because I end up fencing.
I just want to make sure that when you're in your bind that you're not planted on one foot.
Oh yeah. If I did I look like I was?
No, not.
Okay, great.
Okay, go.
Just check.
Ready? Everybody do it. Everybody go one to one.
Does that apply for the first one throwing the shot?
Everything.
Yep.
Yeah. Applies for everything. Great. All right. So let's do the next step. Once we're in the bind, I'm going to relax my arms. Okay? So we come forwards. I make the initial cut. Guillaume's come to the bind, right? I'm just going to relax my arms away from his sword. This can be the preparatory motion for a lot of different things. I could just be weak, and I could go, oh, my sword's too heavy, right? Or I could be preparing to bring my sword around this way. All sorts of things. But as soon as I do that, as soon as my sword starts to go weak, Guillaume's going to follow that forwards with a thrust, right? So as soon as he feels me in that bind, start to go weak, he wants to follow that forwards with the thrust, okay? So I'll do it once, then Guillaume will do it, and then so we come out to that bind, and then I go weak with my arms. He follows that forwards with a thrust, okay? So now Guillaume does it. I come to bind. He goes weak. I follow his sword forwards with the thrust. into the second half of that drill. So instead of them just going soft, they're going to pull their sword back around to make a strike. What's that? It could be a Zwerchau, it could be another Oberhau, it could be a Zornau, it could be a Vedente, it could be anything. It doesn't really matter what. I'm just bringing my sword backwards in order to strike.
I'm not going to get to whatever we're doing.
Right. They're going to interrupt that.
Can I maybe ask a question or kind of add to this? So, in the first iteration of this, you're saying stay on the sword. When I go light, you're going to come in and stay on the sword. Your true edge is still against my sword.
Yep.
If I start to make that second cut, keep your true edge aimed at my sword.
That's right.
So even if I get over here,
I should hit you before that.
But your true edge is still pointing at my sword.
Yep. And yeah, you can even do it this way, right? So as that comes around, and let's say I get a little late and I see that coming in, my true edge is still pointed at his sword.
So he's still on the sword,
right?
Even though they're not in contact.
That's right. I'm following his sword. My true edge is just following his sword. Even if it goes around and I go, oh crap, that thing's coming at me.
Yeah,
boom.
Yeah, and that's exactly what
my true edge is still on his sword.
So if he does come around in time, I'm still protected.
Yep. There's all sorts of ways that you can make this work. Just follow his sword.
You're binding.
Slow.
No, I'm sorry.
You're binding, I'm responding.
Right.
Well, come around. I got gloves on, so I can come around
I'm
a little
striking
faster.
first. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Good. Came on. Oh, see what happened there.
It's okay. No,
that's fine. You hit him before he got his sword around. So the next section of this is going to be what follows. Is we come into the bind, and this time what I get from Guillaume is instead of him going hard, he doesn't like my point anywhere near his face. He wants to push my point away from his face. So all he's going to do is place my sword in a very hard bind. This makes following his sword very difficult, right? But he's giving me momentum and he's giving me time when he pushes on my sword. I have two options. I can either do exactly what I just did, or exactly what he just did and got hit for doing, which is to pull my sword back around my head and hit him, which is at this time now a viable option, because what's going to happen is as we come in and he pushes, now his sword ends up over there, and he can't magnetize his sword to mine and hit me with it. So because he's pushing, he ends up going further, and now I can strike him in that point, right? So that's cutting around. The other option is what Meyer calls going through, or moving your point. I forget, I'm now blanking on what Fiore's terminology of it. I think he just says circle your point. But essentially, again, we come in, he pushes, and I just turn to Ox or Fenestra, and it displaces my sword from his, and then I have very easy flex. Obviously, we all know it comes from there, right? So again, we go to that bind, he pushes, and all I did was turn into this guard. I allowed it slowly, so we're here. When he pushes, I've just allowed my sword to come right up underneath his, and that's what frees me from my thrust. He won't feel that slip, and he'll keep pushing on my sword, and I'll be right in the place where I can thrust. Right in this. And if you really want to be nasty, thrust back down, and now if he tries to bring his hands back, he's down. But that's also more safer. In terms of sword fighting, it's a little bit more dangerous in terms of this. So, let's try those.
Back up a little bit. No, I'm good.
Good.
So I'm giving hard.
Yeah, right, you're going to push.
It seems to me that it doesn't really matter who initiates.
Does not
Maybe
matter.
drop it.
From the bind, it's all about reading your opponent. We're artificially created.
Sorry.
When you do that,
Aiming for the gorget. Sorry.
instead of trying to get the face.
Let's start out in the bind.
Sure. I mean, I'm pushing.
All right.
and then just
Yeah,
flip. See how-
yeah. I'll be right back. I gotta find my sailor.
See? Your point goes right on line. You don't even have to think about it. You're good?
Oh yeah, inhaler.
Good.
I didn't.
So the last concept is we come out and we've come into a bind now that's much more neutral. There's a lot less pressure here. Notice that neither one of us cut very hard to get into this bind, right? So we go back. You don't have to cut hard. This doesn't have to be a threat. I'm not cutting at anything. I'm just putting my sword out there, boom. And here we are in this neutral bind, right?
The position is the threat, not the strike itself.
Exactly. So if I decide to thrust from here, like I did in that first drill, Guillaume's going to feel that coming and he's going to displace it. If I decide to pull my sword away, Guillaume's going to feel that and he's going to do exactly what he should do, right? So I'm in a conundrum. I can't do any of those things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that one. You can either use Finestro, you can use Ox, you can use whatever you do. It's really about flipping the sword. And there's an interesting conversation about how sharp edges work against each other that really helps you understand why winding is what it is, and we can have that conversation later.
I think I have watched that video.
Oh, you've seen that video? Excellent. Yeah, I highly recommend the demarcator one. It's good stuff. And if you haven't seen any demarcator stuff, find that online because that's a plug for bowling. Anyway. So we're out in that bind, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my sword and rotate it so that my edges change. And really I'm just going to create that ox as I go in to that thrusting position.
So move it to horizontal ox.
Right. Now, move it to horizontal ox as you're going forwards, right? So instead of going to ox and then going forwards, because what's going to happen is he's going to see, Guillaume's going to react to that. Right. So there's turn your hands, start your hands first. Start your hands first. Watch my body. Right? Everybody see that? Start my hands first and then follow with the body. Right? But it's starting the hands first, but it's not finishing and then going forwards. That's a no-no. What we want to do is extend and follow. Right? And even if we don't, the reason for this is what we'll do next, okay? So I'm going to tell you that now. The reason for this is what we're going to do next. But I'm not going to tell you what that is. So make sure that your arms are extending first and then your foot is following. So we're turning and then going with the foot and not going at the same time. Again, this is bad. This is good. Okay, I know that's really subtle. I know that's really subtle. But again, start with the arms and then follow with the foot. Okay? Because what we'll do next is going to be a lot of fun. Okay? So we'll cut from here, my side cut, come to the bind, boom, and then wind and go forwards. Wind and go forward. So if you're going to go forwards. Boom. Exactly. Good. Try to keep your body stable and smooth through this whole action.
Sorry, I put instinct.
All right, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Oh,
you're going to wind.
Good. I'm going to wind. Dead on, man.
Slow and smooth. Smooth. Yep. Oh. The reason why I want you to extend your arms first is, so everybody, the comments I got, and I'm going to reiterate that, the comments I got while people were doing this are going, wow, I didn't even feel you thrust, right? And that's the point of the wind, is that, so we're here, and when I come to do this against Guillaume, and I turn my sword, his sword doesn't move in the same time. If I just make a thrust, you see the displacement. But in the wind, I get much closer without pushing on his sword, and I'm much more defended. I also unlock my edge, so that my sword will travel in a smoother fashion, right? Again, that's the conversation about sharp edges. But it's not a guarantee. Guillaume still has his eyes. There's still a little bit of feeling. This is a guy who might know what's coming, right? And he knows that we're in this bind. He's aware what's going to happen, and he's going to see that wind start to go, right? So what's he going to? So if I commit to that wind, what's he going to do? What's he got to do?
Displace.
He's going to displace it, right? He doesn't want to get hit. He's going to defend himself. Just displace, right? I get here, and now I'm in kind of a crappy position. Guillaume's pushed me off to the side, and he can bind me. So step forward with your, like, he can wrestle me, he can grapple me. There's all sorts of fun things he can do, right? Because I've committed to that action. I've come in, I've started that, oh crap, and now my sword's up, right? Bad news for me. This is why I say move the foot last, right? Because he's going to have to start that displacement before my foot moves. Because my foot is not in the air, I can move my sword more effectively. It's very hard to move your sword with your foot in the air, even if it's just this far off the ground. Guarantee it. This is a whole nother class on how to move your feet.
Well, and you're committed to the move at that point,
I'm
too.
committed to going forwards. So I come in, I create that bind, I start the wind with my arms. Guillaume has to defend at this point. Make sense?
Yeah, oh, it
So
does.
he has just created a heavy bind.
Yep.
He just
Right.
forced
Yep.
a heavy bind.
I have forced Guillaume to go heavy in his bind, and what do I do when Guillaume goes heavy in his bind? Right? Either one of my two actions that we know how to do when our opponent goes heavy in their bind. I'm forcing them into this situation. Okay? Let's try it. So that's the class for fighting from the bind, and we hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me on the Unarmored Combat list, or Guillaume always knows where to find me, and or post on the internet, and I will try to respond. And there's all sorts of more things to learn from here. This was sort of one snippet of what we're doing with our fighting. So hope it helps.
Thanks.